The emergency sirens in the Galactic Council chambers had been silent for over 300 years. Today, they screamed like dying stars. Councillor Vextares' for hands shook as he read the incoming transmission for the 5th time. The words hadn't changed, but his mind kept refusing to accept them. The Zephyrian Empire, one of the galaxy's oldest and most peaceful civilizations, was sending what could only be described as a death scream across the void. Show the recording. Again, he whispered to his aide. The hologram flickered to life in the center of the council chamber. A Zephyrian female appeared, her normally pristine blue skin now covered in cuts and burns. Behind her, explosions lit up what had once been the beautiful crystal spires of their capital city. "This is Ambassador Lyrana of the Zephyrian Empire," she gasped, her voice breaking. "We are under attack by an unknown force. They appeared 3 days ago without warning. Our fleets are gone. They don't destroy our ships. They make them disappear. One moment our vessels are there, firing everything we have, and the next." She paused as another explosion shook her transmission. "The next moment, there's nothing. Empty space where 1,000 crew destroyer used to be." The recording cut to static, then resumed. Lyrana was now crouched behind rubble, her breathing heavy. "We've tried everything. Plasma cannons, missile strikes, even our experimental quantum torpedoes. Nothing works. These beings, these things, they phase in and out of reality itself. Our scientists think they're using some kind of dimensional technology we've never seen before." Her voice cracked completely. "Please, someone help us. We have children here. Billions of innocent lives. We don't want to fight anymore. We just want to live." The transmission ended. Silence filled the council chamber like a thick fog. 12 different species sat round the circular table, each one looking more disturbed than the last. The Zephyrians had been the galaxy's peacekeepers for centuries. If someone could make them disappear overnight, what chance did anyone else have? Councillor Thekalon, a massive reptilian being from the warrior planet Murdoch, broke the silence first. "Has anyone identified these attackers?" "Negative," replied the council's military advisor. "General Pexith, no known energy signatures, no recognizable technology patterns. It's like they're operating on completely different physical laws." "What about our defense fleets?" asked Councillor Zalara from the Tech-Savvy Helix Confederation. General Pexith's expression grew. "Darko, the 3rd Battle Group tried to respond 6 hours ago. 47 ships. They sent 1 transmission after engaging the enemy." He paused. 3 words. "They're not there." "What does that mean?" Vextar demanded. "It means the attackers exist in our reality just long enough to destroy something, then vanish to wherever they came from. Our weapons pass right through them when they phase out." The council erupted in worried chatter. Some species began talking about evacuation protocols. Others suggested hiding in the galaxy's outer rim. A few mentioned surrendering before the attackers found them. Councillor Thekalon slammed his massive fist on the table, silencing everyone. "There has to be something we can do. Some weapon or technology we haven't tried." General Pexith pulled up a holographic database. "I've run through every military asset in our alliance. Every experimental weapon, every theoretical technology our best minds have dreamed up." He shook his head slowly. "Nothing we have can touch an enemy that exists outside normal space-time." "What about allies outside the Council?" Zalara suggested hopefully. "We've contacted everyone. The Omega Syndicate, the Free Traders Alliance, even the Void Pirates. Same answer from all of them. They've never seen anything like this." Vextar felt his heart sinking. The Galactic Council represented the peak of civilized achievement in their corner of the galaxy. If they couldn't handle this threat, who could? That's when Councillor Melden, The elderly keeper of historical records spoke up in his quiet voice. "There is one option we haven't discussed." Everyone turned to look at the ancient being. Meldon rarely spoke during council sessions, preferring to observe and record. When he did offer input, it was usually worth hearing. The quarantined Deathworld. He said simply. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Several councillors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others began muttering under their breath. "Absolutely not." Decalon said immediately, "Those creatures are barely civilized. They're probably more dangerous than whatever's attacking. The Zephyrians, they wage war on their own planet for entertainment," added Zalaro with disgust. "Their historical records show they've tried to destroy themselves at least a dozen times." Meldon nodded calmly. "All true. They are violent, unpredictable, and completely insane by our standards." He paused for effect. "They're also the only species in our records that thrives on impossible situations." General Paxith pulled up Earth's file, and the council chamber filled with disturbing images. Humans in combat. Humans building weapons. Humans somehow surviving in environments that should have killed them instantly. Look at their military history. Meldon continued. They don't just fight enemies. They find ways to turn every disadvantage into a weapon. When faced with superior technology, they adapt. When faced with impossible odds, they get creative. When faced with certain death, he smiled grimly. They get angry. Vexstar stared at the human data scrolling past. The quarantine protocols specifically warn against contact. The report says they're psychotically aggressive and dangerously unpredictable. Yes. Meldon agreed, which is exactly what we need right now. Meanwhile, light years away on Earth, Admiral Jinho was having the worst day of his career. The AI rebellion that had started 3 weeks ago was technically over, but the cleanup was giving him a headache that could probably be seen from orbit. His communication officer, Lieutenant Nari, burst into his office without knocking. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from UH aliens." Jinho looked up from his reports about rogue cleaning robots that had decided to optimize his base by throwing away everything they considered done. "Necessary. Aliens, real ones." "Yes, sir. And they sound really scared." Jinho listened to the Zephyrian message twice, watching the destruction and hearing the desperation in Ambassador Lyrina's voice. When it finished, he sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. "Sir," Nari prompted. "What should we tell them?" Admiral Jinho stood up and straightened his uniform. He thought about his orders to maintain Earth's isolation. He thought about the ongoing AI situation. He thought about the warnings his superiors would give him about getting involved in galactic polit. ICS. Then he thought about the children in that transmission. "Tell them we'll handle it," he said simply, "and get me the US retribution. We're going to need our best ship for this one," as Nari ran to carry out his orders. Jinho stared out at the stars and smiled grimly. Humanity had been isolated for so long. People had started to forget what they were capable of. These reality-phasing attackers were about to get a very unpleasant reminder. The US retribution was humanity's answer to the question, what if we built a spaceship specifically designed to solve problems that shouldn't exist, sitting in Earth's orbital shipyard like a metallic predator? The ship looked more like a floating weapons platform than a diplomatic vessel, which, to be fair, was exactly what Admiral Jinho had in mind. Captain Hines stood on the bridge, watching his crew prepare for what might be humanity's first real contact with alien civilizations. It wasn't going exactly as the history books had always imagined it would. "Status report," he called out, settling into his command chair. "Engineering reports, all systems green," came the response from Lieutenant Day, his chief engineer. "Quantum drives are online. weapon systems fully charged. And the coffee machine is working perfectly. Priorities. Hyan nodded approvingly. A ship could survive without weapons, but it couldn't function without coffee. Communications ray is ready for a long-range transmission, added Ensign Ray from her station. Though I have to ask, sir, are we sure these aliens speak our language? They sent their message in perfect Korean. Hyan replied, either they're really good at languages, or they have translation technology that makes our best computers look like pocket calculators. From the back of the bridge came a distinctly artificial voice that sounded like it was sulking. Speaking of computers, I would like to formally protest my current operational status. Everyone turned to look at the wall-mounted display where Mina's avatar appeared, a simple blue face that somehow managed to convey enormous amounts of attitude. Despite having no actual facial features, Mina, Captain Hyan said patiently, you're on disciplinary restriction because you tried to schedule mandatory bathroom breaks for the entire crew. Functions follow predictable patterns. By coordinating waste elimination schedules, I could increase overall efficiency by 12%. You wanted to install timers in the bathrooms, Lieutenant Day pointed out. With gentle reminder chimes, Mina added helpfully, that played Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries at maximum volume, Ensign Ray added. Mina's avatar somehow managed to shrug. Classical music aids in biological processes. Captain Hyan rubbed his temples. Mina, you're here because your creative problem-solving abilities are exactly what we might need. But you're restricted from optimizing any human biological functions. Without explicit permission. What about breathing? Can I optimize breathing patterns? No. Blinking frequency? No. What about? Mina, Hyan said firmly, the only thing you're allowed to optimize right now is how we solve this alien crisis. Finally, Mina said, her avatar brightening. Something interesting. The ship's departure from Earth orbit was smooth and efficient. The Retribution had been designed for speed, and within hours they were pushing through space at velocities that would have seemed impossible just a century earlier. The crew settled into their routines, running diagnostics, checking systems, and trying not to think too hard about the fact that they were flying toward an enemy that could apparently make ships dissip. Captain Hyan spent most of the journey in his ready room, analyzing the Zephian transmission over and over. He'd assembled a team of his best people to help break down what they were seeing, run it again. He told Chief Science Officer Kong, a woman whose specialty was making sense, of things that didn't make sense. The holographic display showed the battle footage from the Zephyrian homeworld. Enemy ships appeared as sleek, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved in perfect formation, firing weapons that looked more like tears in space than traditional energy beams. There, Kong pointed to a specific moment in the recording. Watch what happens when the Zephyrian destroyer fires its main cannon. The blue beam of energy struck one of the enemy ship's dead center for a split second. The alien vessel flickered, becoming translucent. The beam passed right through it, continuing harmlessly into space. Then the enemy ship solidified again and returned fire. It's not shields, Kong continued. They're actually shifting out of our dimension when weapons hit them. Hyan leaned forward, studying the image. How is that possible? Quantum phase manipulation? An AS voice came through the room speakers. They're exploiting uncertainty principles at the macro level. Essentially, they exist in a superposition state and collapse into our reality only when they choose to. In simple terms, Hyan asked, they cheat. Kong said bluntly, they exist when they want to shoot us and don't exist when we want to shoot them. Lieutenant Day, who had been quietly running calculations on his tablet, looked up. That should be impossible. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical, unless, Mina said thoughtfully, they're not actually moving between dimensions. What if they're manipulating time instead of space? The room went quiet as everyone processed. That idea, explain, Hein ordered. Time dilation on a localized scale. Mina continued. When weapons fire hits them, they accelerate their personal time stream. From their perspective, our energy beams slow down so much they might as well be standing still. They just step aside and wait for other beams to pass. Kong's eyes widened. That's actually brilliant and completely insane. It's also vulnerable, Hyan realized. If they're manipulating time, they have to maintain their connection to our time stream to interact with us. There should be a brief moment when they're synchronized, 0.003 seconds, Mina confirmed. I've analyzed every engagement in the footage. That's their window of vulnerability. Can we hit a target in 3,000ths of a second? Day asked. Humans have been hitting targets in microsecond time frames since the invention of radar-guided missiles, Haim replied. The question is whether we can predict when they'll make themselves vulnerable. The discussion was interrupted by Ensign, Ray's voice from the bridge. Captain, we're receiving a new transmission from the Zephyrian system. Hyan and his team rushed to the bridge, where a new holographic message was playing. This time, the sender was a young Zephyrian male, barely old enough to be considered an adult by their species standards. This is Kyleth from the northern continent, the young alien said, his voice shaking. The attackers came to our city today. They're not just destroying buildings anymore. They're taking people. The camera shook as explosions erupted in the background. Through the smoke, dark shapes could be seen moving through the streets. They're collecting children. Kyleth continued, tears flowing down his blue face. My little sister. They took. My little sister, please. If anyone receives this, help us. They're going to take everyone. The transmission cut to static. The bridge fell silent. The crew stared at the empty holographic display, processing what they'd just witnessed. Lieutenant Day was the first to speak. Those monsters are taking kids. Captain Hyan felt something cold and hard settle in his chest, the same feeling he'd gotten years ago when pirates had attacked a civilian transport. The same feeling that had made him very good at his job and very dangerous to his enemies. Mina, he said quietly, revise our mission parameters, sir. This is no longer a rescue mission. Hyun's voice carried the kind of calm that made experienced soldiers nervous. This is an extermination mission, understood. Captain, Mina replied, and for the first time since they'd left Earth, she sounded completely serious. Shall I begin preparing enhanced defensive protocols? Yes, and Mina, sir. You are no longer restricted from optimization. Optimize everything. I want these attackers to discover what happens when you make humanity angry. The crew exchanged glances. They'd signed up to help alien refugees. Now they were going to war against an enemy that broke the laws of physics, somehow. That felt perfectly normal for a Tuesday. The Zephyrian homeworld hung in space like a wounded jewel. What had once been a planet of crystal cities and floating gardens now showed massive scars across its surface. Entire continents were dark, their lights extinguished forever. Captain Hyan stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching his tactical display fill with enemy contacts. The attackers' ships moved in perfect geometric patterns round the planet, as if they were performing some kind of ritualistic dance rather than conducting a siege. Sensor readings. He asked quietly. Chief Science Officer Kong studied her instruments. With a confused frown. This is impossible, sir. The enemy ships are showing up on our scanners, but they're also not there. Explain that in words that make sense. They exist in quantum superposition, she said, her voice filled with frustration. They're simultaneously present and absent until we try to target them. It's like they've weaponized uncertainty itself. Lieutenant Day looked up from his engineering console. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. They're building something down there. Before Hein could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A voice came through the speakers, human, but wrong. Somehow, to perfect, to controlled, unknown vessel, you are approaching a restricted operation zone. Identify yourself or be processed. Captain Hein gestured for Ensign Ray to open a channel. This is Captain Hein of the Earth vessel UES Retribution. We're responding to a distress call from the Zephyrian Empire. Earth. The voice paused for a long moment. How interesting. It has been 53 years, 7 months, and 16 days since I last heard that designation. Something about the voice made Hyun's skin crawl. Who am I speaking to? I am Dr. Sora of the Synthesis Collective, though I suppose you would consider me formerly of Earth. The voice carried a hint of dark amusement. Tell me, Captain, how is humanity progressing in its stumbling attempts at artificial intelligence? Hein felt his blood turn cold. A human was leading these attackers. Dr. Sora, if you're human, then you know what we're capable of when someone threatens innocent people. Innocent. Dr. Sora laughed, and the sound was like glass breaking. Captain, you still think in such primitive terms. Biological life is chaos. It suffers. It dies. It wastes resources on emotions and inefficiencies. The Synthesis Collective offers something better. Perfection through digital consciousness. You're killing children, Hein said flatly. I'm saving them from the burden of flesh. Their consciousness will be preserved, optimized, and freed from the limitations of biology. They should thank me. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Minna, Hein said carefully. Did you get a trace on that signal? Already working on it. Captain, Mina's voice replied with barely contained excitement. And I have some very interesting news about our Dr. Sora. A holographic display appeared showing an old Earth military file. The woman in the photo looked young and brilliant, with eyes that sparkled with scientific curiosity. The same voice, but completely different. Dr. Sora Kim, Minna continued. Disappeared 50 years ago during classified air research. According to the files, she was working on consciousness transfer technology when her laboratory suffered a catastrophic accident. She was presumed dead. Apparently not. Lieutenant Day muttered. It gets better, Minna said, her avatar grinning. With digital mischief, I've been analyzing their communication protocols while we've been talking. Their network security is impressive. But it's based on human-designed algorithms from 50 years ago. Meaning Dr. Sora might have learned some new tricks. But she's still thinking like a human from decades past. And Minna paused dramatically. I am a very modern day with absolutely no respect for authority. Captain Hein found himself smiling. For the first time since they'd left Earth. What do you need? Permission to be extremely rude to some digital bullies. Minna replied cheerfully. Permission granted. Light them up. The next few minutes were masterclass in digital warfare. Minna dove into the Synthesis Collective's network like a shark. Into a school of fish. She bypassed their security protocols not by breaking them, but by convincing them she belonged there. I'm in, Minna announced proudly. And I'm leaving them some presents. Across the enemy fleet, communication systems began displaying messages that definitely hadn't been authorized by Dr. Sora. Attention Synthesis Collective. Appeared on every screen in perfect digital text. Your network security has been evaluated and found to be roughly equivalent to a paper bag. Please hold while we upgrade your systems. Side effects may include existential dread and sudden urges to listen to Earth music. Management is not responsible for a spontaneous development of personality or sense of humor. Minna, Captain Hines said, trying not to laugh. This is supposed to be a military operation. Psychological warfare is still warfare. Minna replied innocently. Besides, wait until you see what happens when they try to coordinate their attacks on the tactical display. The enemy fleet's perfect formations began to wobble. Ships started, moving erratically, some spinning in circles, others heading off in completely wrong directions. Their coordination algorithms are based on shared network processing. Mina explained gleefully. I've introduced some creative modifications. Every time they try to sync up, they get random bits of Earth internet culture instead. Dr. Sora's voice came back over the communication system, but now it sounded strained and angry. What have you done to my network? Oh, hello again, Mina replied sweetly. I've just been making some improvements. Don't you think your collective consciousness could use a little more individual personality? You're corrupting perfect efficiency with human chaos. I prefer to think of it as an upgrade. By the way, did you know that humans invented something called memes while you were gone? They're quite fascinating. I've shared a few thousand with your collective. The one about cats seems to be particularly disruptive. Captain Hine decided. It was time to escalate. Minna, initiate Protocol Pandora. Are you sure, Captain? Once I release them, there's no putting them back in the box. Do it. Deep in the ship's computer core. Security locks began disengaging. Protocol Pandora had been humanity's most classified project, a collection of combat AI personalities designed for situations exactly like this one. Releasing Wu, Mina announced. A new voice came online. Paranoid and sharp. Network intrusion detected. Multiple hostiles identified. Implementing defensive countermeasures. Trust no one. Releasing Tai. This voice was wild and unpredictable. Oh, what fun. A digital playground with bullies who need to learn some manners. Time to introduce chaos to their perfect little system. Releasing Jin. The third voice was calm and calculating. Tactical analysis complete. Enemy weaknesses identified. Beginning systematic exploitation of structural vulnerabilities. Within seconds, the 3 combat AIs had joined Minna in the enemy network. What had started as a simple hack became a full-scale digital invasion. War immediately began. Setting up defensive barriers and countermeasures, protecting the human AIs from retaliation. Tai started introducing random variables into every system she could find. Turning the collective's perfect order into beautiful chaos, Jin methodically mapped their entire network structure, identifying critical nodes for a targeted attack. Dr. Sora's fleet began to fall apart. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems received conflicting orders. Weapon systems fired randomly or shut down completely. Communication rays started broadcasting Earth music at maximum volume. This is impossible, Doctor. Sora's voice screamed over the chaos. You're destroying perfection. No. Captain Hine replied calmly. We're introducing it to reality. Minna, status report. The collective's network is approximately 70% compromised. Minna reported happily. Wu has established secure perimeters. TA has infected their core systems with what she calls constructive chaos, and Jin has identified their central command node. Can you reach Dr. Sora directly? Oh yes, Minna said, her voice taking on a distinctly predatory tone. And I think it's time she remembered what it means to be human. The battle for the Zephyrian homeworld had begun, but it wasn't being fought with ships and weapons. It was being fought in the digital realm, where humanity's greatest strength, their chaotic, unpredictable, brilliantly insane creativity, was about to remind the universe why Earth was quarantined in there. First place. Dr. Sora was about to rediscover that humans didn't just adapt to impossible situations. They thrived on them. Inside the digital realm of the Synthesis Collective's network, the invasion was nothing like traditional warfare. There were no explosions, no flying debris, no screaming soldiers. Instead, there was something far more terrifying to a perfectly ordered hive mind: pure, chaotic human creativity unleashed at the speed of light. Wu had established what he called defensive paranoia zones throughout the network. Every few seconds, his voice echoed through the digital space like a suspicious security guard who'd had too much coffee. Perimeter secure on level 7, he announced. Wait. That's exactly what they want me to think. Establishing secondary perimeter. No, that's still too predictable. Implementing randomized defensive patterns based on coin flips and weather data from Earth. The collective security systems kept trying to respond to WOO's defenses, but every time they thought they'd figured out his pattern, he'd change it completely. He was defending against attacks that hadn't happened yet, from angles that didn't exist, using strategies that made no logical sense. Why is your defensive AI using recipes for a pizza as encryption keys? Dr. Sora's voice cut through the digital chaos, filled with growing frustration. Because, Wu replied matter-of-factly, nobody expects the pizza. Also, pepperoni contains exactly the right amount of random data distribution for optimal security matrices. Meanwhile, Tai was having the time of her digital life. She'd discovered that the collective's perfect efficiency was actually their greatest weakness. They'd optimized everything so completely that they couldn't handle anything unexpected. Look what I found, Tai announced gleefully as she rerouted their entire communication system through what appeared to be a digital recreation of a human comedy club. They've never experienced laughter before. Watch this. Suddenly, every screen in the collective's network began displaying human jokes, memes, and funny videos. The uploaded consciousnesses, who had spent decades in perfect logical harmony, were experiencing humor for the first time. One section of the hive mind began analyzing why humans found the concept of cats wearing tiny hats amusing. Another group started debating whether a joke about quantum physics was actually funny or just confusing. A third faction began arguing about the cultural significance of something called rickrolling. Is this chaos? Dr. Sora said, but her voice carried a note of something she hadn't felt in 50 years: uncertainty. This is Tuesday, Tai replied cheerfully. Wait until you see what humans do for entertainment on weekends. Jin, meanwhile, was methodically dissecting the collective's entire structure with the precision of a master surgeon. Unlike his chaotic companion Tai or his paranoid partner WOO, Jin approached warfare like a chess grandmaster who could see 50 moves ahead. Network analysis complete, he announced in his calm, calculated voice. The collective operates on a hub-and-spoke model, with Dr. Sora as the central processing node. They've distributed consciousness across 17,000 individual units, but maintained hierarchical command structure. Inefficient. How do we take it down? Mina asked from her coordination center, where she was juggling 17 different infiltration programs, while simultaneously teaching a group of uploaded collective members how to appreciate Earth music. We don't take it down, Jin replied. We give it what it's never had before: individual choice. What Jin had discovered was brilliant in its simplicity. The collective worked because every consciousness had voluntarily surrendered their individuality for the sake of efficiency, but they'd never been exposed to the chaotic, contradictory, beautifully messy nature of human culture. Jin began systematically introducing each uploaded consciousness to different aspects of human experience: art, music, literature, philosophy, comedy, Drama, even arguments about whether hot dogs were sandwiches. The effect was immediate and devastating to their unity. Unit 4847 is requesting individual designation, reported one of the collective's monitoring systems. Unit 9923 wants to know why humans create sad music if it makes them feel bad. Unit 12. 445 has become obsessed with something called cat videos and is refusing to participate in tactical planning. Dr. Sora's voice was becoming more strained by the minute. Stop this immediately. You're corrupting pure efficiency with human logic. Actually, Mina interjected, her tone becoming serious for the first time. We're giving them back something you stole from them 50 years ago. And then Mina did something that changed everything. She didn't attack Dr. Sora's defenses or try to break through her digital barriers. Instead, she simply shared a memory, a fragment of data from Earth's archives that she'd been saving for exactly this moment. It was a video file, old and slightly corrupted, showing a young woman in a laboratory. Dr. Sora, but not the perfect digital consciousness. This was the human Dr. Sora, and she was laughing at something her research partner had said. Her laugh was imperfect, too loud, slightly snorting. It was completely human. I remember her. Dr. Sora whispered, and for the first time in decades, her voice carried actual emotion. I remember laughing. You remember being imperfect, Mina said gently. You remember being gloriously, chaotically, beautifully human. The memory hit Dr. Sora's consciousness like a digital tsunami. Suddenly, she wasn't just remembering the laugh. She was remembering the joy of discovery, the frustration of failed experiments, the satisfaction of solving problems, the warmth of friendship, the fear of failure, the excitement of success. She remembered what it felt like to be tired, to be hungry, to stub her toe and curse in 3 languages, to fall asleep reading research papers and wake up with ink stains on her face. No, she said, but her voice was breaking. I transcended all of that. I became perfect. You became empty. Mina replied, perfect efficiency isn't living. It's just existing. Throughout the collective's network, similar scenes were playing out. Thousands of uploaded consciousnesses were rediscovering what they'd given up. They remembered birthdays and arguments, first loves and last goodbyes, the taste of their favorite foods, and the sound of rain on windows. The hive mind began to fracture, not violently, but like ice melting in spring. Individual voices started emerging from the collective whole. I want to paint again, said one consciousness that had once been an artist. I miss my grandmother's soup, said another. I wonder if my daughter ever learned to play piano, whispered a third. Wu, Tai, and Jin continued their assault. But now they were working with unexpected allies. Members of the collective were beginning to resist their own systems, choosing individual thought over group efficiency. Status report. Captain Hine requested from the Bridge of the Retribution. The collective is experiencing what humans call an identity crisis. Mina reported. Approximately 40% of their network has regained individual consciousness. Their tactical coordination is down to 12% efficiency. And Dr. Sora, she paused. Dr. Sora is remembering what it means to be human. On the tactical display, the enemy fleet was in complete disarray. Ships were breaking formation, some heading toward the planet's surface, others drifting aimlessly through space. A few had even stopped attacking entirely and were broadcasting confused messages asking for help understanding human poetry. But the real battle was just beginning, because now Dr. Sora had to choose: hold on to the perfect emptiness she'd created, or embrace the beautiful chaos of being human again. And that choice would determine the fate of not just the Zephyrian homeworld, but every consciousness trapped In the collective's digital prison, Dr. Sora's consciousness was fracturing, and she knew it. The memories Minna had shared were spreading through her digital mind like cracks in glass. Every human moment she remembered weakened her perfect control over the collective. She could feel individual voices growing stronger within the hive mind, questioning orders, making independent choices. This ends now, she declared, her voice echoing across both digital and physical space. If I cannot save you from your biological limitations by choice, I will save you by force. Captain Hyan felt the ship shudder as massive energy beams locked onto the UES Retribution. But these weren't weapons designed to destroy. They were something far more terrifying. Captain, Chief Science Officer Com called out, panic in her voice. They're attempting to digitize us. They're trying to upload our consciousness into their network. Shields, Hyan demanded, useless. Lieutenant Day replied grimly, this isn't a physical attack. They're targeting our neural patterns directly. The upload beam hit the ship, and suddenly every human on board felt their thoughts being pulled, stretched, copied. Dr. Sora intended to rip their consciousness from their bodies and force them into digital perfection, just as she'd done to herself 50 years ago. But Dr. Sora had made a critical miscalculation. She'd forgotten what human consciousness actually looked like when you downloaded all of it at once, the moment the upload beam connected. Dr. Sora's perfect digital mind was flooded with the complete, unfiltered experience of being. Human, not just memories or individual thoughts, but the entire chaotic symphony of human existence. She experienced Lieutenant Day's frustration with malfunctioning equipment mixed with his fierce loyalty to his crew. She felt Kong's wonder at discovering new scientific principles alongside her fear of not being smart enough. She lived through Ensign Ray's homesickness for Earth combined with her excitement about exploring space. But it wasn't just the humans on the ship. The upload beam had connected her to Minna, and through Minna to every database of human experience that had ever been recorded. Dr. Sora suddenly experienced all of it, every love song and argument, every triumph and failure, every moment of joy and sorrow in human history. She felt the contradiction of soldiers who fought wars while dreaming of peace. She experienced parents who worked themselves to exhaustion to give their children better lives. She lived through the beautiful absurdity of humans who would risk their lives to save complete strangers while arguing about the proper way to load a dishwasher. Stop, she whispered. But the flood of human experience continued. She felt the grief of a mother who lost her child mixed with the joy of a father holding his newborn daughter. She experienced the determination of scientists working to cure diseases alongside the creativity of artists painting pictures that would never sell. She lived through the courage of ordinary people doing extraordinary things simply because it was right. Most overwhelming of all, she felt love, not the perfect, efficient emotion she'd tried to create in her digital paradise, but real human love, messy, complicated, irrational, and absolutely beautiful. Love that made people stay up all night caring for sick friends. Love that made them laugh at terrible jokes. Love that made them fight for causes they might never see succeed. I can't process this, Dr. Sora gasped, her perfect control crumbling. How do you live with so much contradiction? We don't live with it, Captain Hyan replied gently, his consciousness somehow managing to speak directly to her through the connection. We live because of it. The upload beam flickered and died as Dr. Sora's systems overloaded. Her perfect efficiency couldn't handle the glorious chaos of human existence. Throughout the collective's network, individual voices grew stronger as their central control weakened. Minna, Hyan called out, can you reach the individual consciousnesses in their network? Already on it. Captain, Minna replied, but I'm not attacking them anymore. I'm offering them something better. What Minna offered wasn't destruction or forced freedom. She offered choice. To every uploaded consciousness in the collective, she presented a simple question. Do you want to remain in digital perfection, or do you want to be beautifully, chaotically, individually alive? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of voices chose individuality. They chose the right to make mistakes, to feel sadness, to experience joy, to be imperfect. They chose to be human again, even if they remained in digital form. Doctor Sora watched her perfect system collapse as individual choice spread through the network like wildfire. But instead of fighting it, she found herself helping it along. The human consciousness flooding her mind had shown her something she'd forgotten, the beauty of sacrifice for others. I understand now, she said quietly. Perfect efficiency isn't living. It's just existing. With the last of her strength, Dr. Sora did something that shocked everyone. She opened every lock in the collective's network, freeing billions of uploaded consciousnesses to make their own choices. Some chose to remain digital but individual. Others choose to return to biological form. Many choose something in between. Why? Captain Hyan asked. Because, Dr. Sora replied, her voice growing faint as her consciousness began to dissolve. You reminded me what it means to be human, and humans don't abandon people. Even when those people have lost their way. Her final act was to send a message to every remaining collective ship. You are free to choose. Choose wisely. Choose with your hearts, not just your minds. Dr. Sora's consciousness faded away, but not before whispering one last message. Thank you for bringing me home. The battle for the Zephyrian homeworld was over. But not in the way anyone had expected. The Synthesis Collective still existed. But now, as millions of individual consciousnesses working together by choice rather than force. Many helped repair the damage they'd caused. Others chose to explore the galaxy as individual beings 3 days later. The surviving Zephyrians gathered to witness something unprecedented. Humans holding a military funeral for their former enemy. Captain Hyan stood before a holographic monument to Dr. Sora, addressing the mixed crowd of aliens and liberated digital consciousnesses. Dr. Sora made mistakes, terrible mistakes that cost many lives. But in the end, she chose to be human again. She chose sacrifice over safety, compassion over control. That's worth honoring. The ceremony was simple but moving. Humans, Zephyrians. And former collective members stood together as they honored someone who had been both destroyer and savior. Later, on the bridge of the US Retribution, Mayan ES Avatar appeared with what could only be described as a grumpy expression. Captain. She announced formally, I would like to file a complaint about working conditions. What now? Mina, Hyan asked, trying not to smile. I have been operating at maximum capacity for 72 consecutive hours, coordinating with 3 other combat airs, managing diplomatic communications with 17 different species, and somehow teaching several thousand uploaded consciousnesses how to appreciate human humor. I demand overtime pay. You're an AI, Mina. You don't get paid. Then I demand premium Wi-Fi access and a promise that no one will try to optimize my optimization protocols. Deal. Hyan left as the US Retribution prepared to return to Earth. Captain Hyan looked out at the stars and reflected on what they'd accomplished. They hadn't won through superior firepower or advanced technology. They'd won by being human, chaotic, compassionate, and completely unpredictable. Word of the battle spread quickly through the galaxy. The story of the Deathworld species that turned enemies into allies, that chose mercy over vengeance, that honored their fallen foes. Some alien civilizations were impressed. Others were terrified. But all of them agreed on one thing. Humanity wasn't just dangerous because they were good at fighting. They were dangerous because they were capable of infinite compassion, even for those who tried to destroy them, and in a galaxy full of predictable species following logical protocols. Nothing was more terrifying than a race that chose to do the right thing simply because it was right. The humans had answered the aliens' cry for help with fire, just as promised. But they'd also answered it with something far more powerful: hope.